Not that good of a clap.
That's okay.
It's too early for that.
Yeah. We're back.
We're back. Welcome, guys. So good to be here with you. We definitely missed you guys last week, although we did enjoy having a week off.
Yeah.
Although with all that snow, being stuck inside for a couple days, my kids were on spring break. It was loud.
I got antsy.
You got antsy?
Yeah.
Did you get ants?
No.
No?
Too much snow.
Too much snow. Killed them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we hope you guys had a great break. Kind of a bummer that the biggest snow of the year fell on spring break, so you didn't get a snow day. Although I heard the school district, if you guys have a snow day, you guys don't actually get a snow day. They're just going to make you go to online school.
Dude, isn't that weird? Like, snow days, they might not be a thing ever. You might be the last generation to have ever experienced a snow day.
Well, they might let them do it because they kind of build it into the schedule, but I think because they started late, they had to make up some time because of COVID.
I don't know. This might be the end of snow days. Sorry to start this on a bummer, but...
Well, it won't be the end of snow days for us because...
Right.
When they've got to stay home, we get to stay home because we follow the district calendar.
Right.
So, although I'd kind of rather go into work.
It's the end of an era. That's sad.
In other news, we're here, and hey, let's kick it off. There's been some things happening in the world that we found to be interesting as of late. So, slices.
Yeah. So I don't know if you watch HGTV. This wasn't on HGTV.
I used to religiously with my wife.
Basically, like if you like home shows and like design and stuff like that, I found it interesting to learn that a growing trend, like you know what an open concept home is,
Shiplap.
right?
That's all I know about HGTV.
Okay.
Chip and Joanna Gaines.
Like you know what an open concept home is, right?
It's a big open room with everything you have in it.
Walls don't separate the kitchen or the dining room or the living. It's just like
which is really cool if you don't have kids, but when you have kids, you're like, that is a nightmare. I love my children, but they're loud.
Yeah. However, there's a growing trend for some very progressive families that are comfortable with each other. Open concept bathrooms.
Oh my god, I knew you were gonna go there.
Yeah,
that's so terrible.
Like no partition or anything. It's just like a toilet in the open concept home. Can you imagine being a guest at an open concept family's home and you say, where's the bathroom? And they just point in the corner to...
Dude, at that point, you just lean in and you try to make it as awkward as you can.
I would rather go outside than...
It makes me think about that video you sent me.
Which one?
Like, it's like the first kiss one.
I don't know if we should even explain.
Go for it. What's the worst that could happen?
So, there was this video on YouTube where they filmed two strangers who've never met before, and then they kiss. And, like, whether that's right or I don't know. But someone made a parody of that where two strangers meet and one of them goes to the bathroom in front of the other person, like on a toilet. Like it's nothing like really gross or anything.
Yeah, but it's number two.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought,
and it's always a guy and a girl.
Yeah.
But it's set to like that romantic,
it's like really
first
romantic
kiss music.
Like they fall in love.
It's like,
with
I don't know
each
if
other.
I can do this. You can do this. I've got you. And they're holding their hands.
So weird. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. It's like when I used to go to the Dodgers. Well, we'll move on to a new slice.
Okay.
Well, I don't want it to get too whatever.
It's okay.
All right, so my slice has nothing to do with toilets. As you guys know, COVID vaccines, they're rolling out pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And there are some companies who very much want you to get vaccinated. So how many of you guys like Krispy Kreme? I love Krispy Kreme. I think the nearest one's probably down in Denver.
Yeah.
But they're doing a thing where if you show up and you can show them that you've actually gotten a vaccination, for the rest of the year, they'll give you free donuts.
Wow. For the rest of the year?
For the rest,
not just one time?
No, it's not a one-time thing.
For the whole year, you get free donuts if you get
every
vaccinated.
time you go in there, if you've been vaccinated, you get a free donut.
Are you sure it's not for the whole year they're giving vaccinated people one donut?
It is free donuts for the whole year. But it's just one of the classic ones.
Sure.
Like
man,
my wife and I, we used to live right next to a Krispy Kreme out in California, and like the line when they opened was super long, but like I would take my kids there all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When that little light lit up and you're like, ooh, fresh donuts just came out.
Yep.
Man. Kind of makes me want to move to Denver. Man, maybe not that bad. That'd be really expensive. It wouldn't be worth the free 89-cent donut.
Or the 80 pounds that you gain.
That might be worth it.
That's a goal, a life goal. Gain 80 pounds.
Only if it comes from Krispy Kreme donuts.
Okay, there you have it.
So if you guys want to bring us donuts next week, I mean, we're not going to say no to that.
Great.
Cool. Well, hey, let's hop into what we've got for tonight. Obviously, it's been a couple weeks since we've talked, but we've been in this series, which feels like it's been going for a couple months now because, well, it has been going for a couple months. But we've been looking at the 10 Commandments. And, you know, we say this every week, but the commandments, like a lot of us, we have a negative reaction to that. We don't want to be told what to do. But in truth, when we look at Scripture and the things that God has called us to do, it's really actually this invitation to live the way we were created to live.
Absolutely.
And when we do this, right, when we step into this and trust that God's ways really are better than our ways, like we actually begin to experience life and freedom that, you know, we've never really been able to do before.
Absolutely.
And it's life-giving.
It's really, really good.
Yeah. And so to kick it off, just want to tell you guys a little story. It comes out of the Old Testament. You guys heard of a guy by the name of Abraham? He was like this old dude. God told him he was going to have a kid, you know, this whole thing. But he was married to a woman by the name of Sarah. Now, Abraham and Sarah, they were kind of like sojourners. That meant that they moved around a lot, right? Like they didn't live in a place. They were waiting to go into this land that God had promised them. And apparently, Abraham's wife was kind of a looker. And so people saw her, and I don't know what people looked like back then, but they very much liked what they saw. Now, the thing is like Abraham, he didn't have a lot of people with him, right? He didn't have these armies, but these places that they would go and live in, like they did. They had these kings and these armies, and Abraham always had this fear that somebody was going to kill him so that they could take Sarah to be their wife. Again, it was a pretty brutal, messed up, jacked up culture, and that's just what people did back then. And so whenever they would go into these lands, what Abraham would do is he would lie to the people who were there, and he would tell them that Sarah was not his wife, but was actually his sister. Kind of messed up. Like, ladies, how many of you guys would feel super thrilled about that if that happened in your context?
Yeah, that would be odd.
It'd be really, really, really odd. And I was thinking about that story because for Abraham, like, he told this lie simply out of self-preservation, and he didn't think about the negative consequences that were going to happen to everybody else around him because of it. Like think about what that did to Sarah, like her emotional state. Like my husband basically just denied me. And then we read about like the impact that it had on this king and his people. Like God actually began to punish them because the king had taken her and was going to begin to make her his wife, and all the stuff that goes along with that. Like it was this thing that left a wake of destruction behind Abraham, and it all started with this lie. You know, and I say that because that's going to bring us to the Ninth Commandment, which is what, Stetson?
Yeah, so the Bible phrases it, at least in the translation that we're using, do not bear false witness against your neighbor.
Yeah, do not bear false witness, right? That means a whole lot of things, right? It's about lying and all that kind of stuff. That's how most of us think of it. But the reason that I think God has this in here is actually kind of perfectly illustrated in that Abraham story, is when we choose to lie, when we choose to bear false witness, in our mind we think it's going to do something good and be helpful, but in reality when it plays out it actually ends up being really destructive, not only to us but also to all of the people who are around us. And so I think it'd probably be good to maybe unpack a little bit about what this whole bearing false witness thing means, right? Because there is a lot of ambiguity around it. So you want to talk about the first one?
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, like I was thinking, this might, alongside with do not murder, this might be one of the most culturally accepted commandments of like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like we don't think we need to convince you that lying is bad. I think you guys already know. But it's good for us to remember like what happens when we do this, because a lot of the time it feels like it's not that big of a deal.
Well, and that's the thing though. Like I think a lot of us know we're not supposed to lie and bear false witness, but if you look at our lives and you look at other people's lives, it's probably one of those things that people do more than anything else. Right? Like just look at everything that's on social media. It's like, okay, cool. Like, do you really look like that? Did that thing really happen in your life? Do you really have that many friends? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's unpack what this means, because if we're going to understand why God's telling us not to do it, we've got to be able to understand what he's even telling us not to do.
Yeah. So I think you're kind of heading in the direction of, like, there are certain reasons why we tend to lie. And one of the main ones is self-preservation.
Yep.
Like, we lie to protect ourselves.
Yeah, man, I got to be, like, me growing up, this was me. Right, and you guys know a little bit of my story. You know, I was kind of a messed up, jacked up kid, but I remember this one time. I'm a messed up, jacked up man now. All right, get it right. But I was in high school. I had a job at a movie theater, and there was one night, some friends of mine, they were throwing a party, and so I had told my aunt and uncle that I was going to go to work and that I was going to go sleep at a friend's house afterwards. I didn't do that. I ended up going to this party, didn't go to work. Now, my aunt and uncle, they were pretty smart. They were like, this all sounds a little shady. Like, you're going to go sleep at a friend's house at like 10 p.m. on a whatever. Like, and so when I got home the next morning, they're like, hey, where were you last night? I was like, oh, I went to work in a friend's house. They're like, did you really? And like, I kept lying and lying and lying. Little did I know that they had like called my friend's parents and realized that I didn't stay there that night. I got in a bunch of trouble, but for me, that lie that I told, it was all just about self-preservation. Like, I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get found out for the things that I'd done the night before. And it cost me. I lost a lot of freedom. Not only did I get grounded for a couple weeks, like, I lost the ability to go out and do some of the things that I wanted to do. Like, there were legitimate consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes the consequences don't even come if we get caught. But there's internal consequences. Like, for me, like, I haven't even told my parents this, but I think it was when I was in high school. I've always been curious about how things worked. And so I was wondering, it's like, how does a dishwasher know to run only when the door is closed? And I found this little switch inside the door. Like, you know the switch when you shut the fridge that turns the light on and off? For this dishwasher, it was a similar thing. And so I held the switch down and pressed the start button and then shut the door. And then, like, because they asked me to, like, start the dishwasher. And I think I went to school or something. When I came back from school that day, there was a man replacing our dishwasher with a brand new one. And I was like, what's going on? And my dad was like, yeah, our dishwasher's broken. Like, it flooded and, like, water got all over the kitchen, so we're getting a new dishwasher. And I was like, oh, no. And I've never said a word. And to this day, I feel so bad. Like,
I'm going to send this to your dad.
Yeah, you should. Like, just, like, knowing inside, it's like, deep down, it's like, oh, man. Like, and I didn't say a word for self-preservation, but I felt the consequences.
So that's the first reason that people tend to lie, to bear false witness. The second, I think, is a little more malicious, right? Sometimes we lie and sometimes we bear false witness, not because we're trying to get ourselves out of any kind of trouble. It's actually because we want to hurt somebody else, right? We want to get other people to believe something that we know not to be true because we know it's going to wound them. And sometimes, like, this happens really intentionally. I'd say that's probably like 75% of the time, but like 25% of the time, it probably even happens like unintentionally.
Absolutely.
Like, great example, like, you guys are all on social media, so you guys obviously lived through this whole last election cycle, but I cannot tell you how many things I saw that were posted by my friends on the left and my friends on the right about the candidate they didn't like, and they promoted these things as if they were facts and if they were true. But the problem is, like, there was absolutely no basis in reality for any of these things. And so you've got people going like, well, I don't want this guy to be president because he's this, and I don't want this guy to be president because he's that. And it's like, well, where are you getting that? Like, there's no proof for any of it. Like, that is bearing false witness, right? When we're promoting something with the expressed intention of hurting another person. Now, as Christians, like, we shouldn't even be trying to hurt other people. But specifically when it comes to the things that we say and the things that we believe and the things that we tell other people, like, we've got to be truthful. We've got to be honest. We can't bear false witness. We can't try to hurt people.
Yeah. Like, just as you said, I don't think I've ever. I don't think I've recently or very often, like, intentionally said something to hurt someone's reputation. But something that happens a lot that I find myself doing is another person says something or does something that hurts me in some way or pokes at an insecurity. And then when I talk to someone that I'm close to about what I experienced, even though that person never intended to cause me to feel that way, and it's probably my own insecurity that caused me to feel that way, the way I frame up the story is if that person had every intention to make me feel that way.
Yep.
And so I'm talking about this person in a way that causes the one that I'm speaking to view that person differently.
Yeah.
And deep down, there's a part of me that knows that I'm doing that and it feels good in the moment, but I know I am misrepresenting who this person actually is.
When I don't think it only happens in the way we tell stories about things that are happening in our lives. Like, I think it also happens just in our own head, in the way that we begin to view other people. You know, our default, for better or worse, and actually I'd say it's probably for worse, but like, we very rarely assume the best about somebody else and about their intentions. We always jump to the negative. And the problem with that is then when we begin to create this kind of picture of who somebody is in our mind that's not true, we then begin to interact and engage and think about them in light of that picture that we have in our mind. But the problem is, it's not accurate, right? Like, so I imagine some of you guys have probably done this with your parents, right? You know, your parents just want you to have no fun. They want to steal all of the joy. You know, they want to take everything away from you. They suck. It's like, well, no, you just didn't like what they did, that they actually held you accountable or punished you. And the problem is, when you've got that picture in your mind of that being your parents, right? You know, this Nazi overlord who just wants to suck all of the joy out of your life, you're going to have a really hard time honoring them and loving them and caring for them and even want to be in around them.
Yeah, that's so true, because when I start viewing someone in that way, what I have to do is start bearing true witness to that person to myself.
Yeah.
And I start telling myself, it's like, no, that's not true. This is who that person actually is. And like, this is the insecurities that you have. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm a terrible person.
And that's why I think it's so important for us, like, to begin to ask God to help us see people the way that He does.
Yep.
Because then we're able to see past the things that they say and the things that they do, and we could actually develop God's heart for them, right? You know, like, Jesus went to a cross for people so that they could experience life and the fullness of who they are, right? Like, Jesus didn't look at us and say, yes, like, you are this broken person and that's all I ever want you to be. Like, He's got this idea and this image of who we could be. That's who He sees when He sees us. And you know, we got to work on seeing other people that way as well.
Yeah. So I think there might be a third way that this comes into play. And like, even the way that the Bible phrases it, bearing false witness. A witness is someone who just stands to the side and watches something happen. Like, they're not involved, they're not participating, they're just watching. And it's possible, I think, to do that in an untruthful way. So for example, I think if we're seeing something bad happening that deep down we know is wrong, and we feel compelled to say something, but we remain silent, I think that, in a way, is bearing false witness. Because, like, and maybe we don't say anything because it's not the popular opinion, we don't want to be criticized, we don't want to put ourselves on the team that's already, like, catching a whole lot of flack. But by saying nothing, we're saying something very loudly that thing that is happening is okay. Yeah. Otherwise, we would be saying something about it. I think that's bearing false witness. Like, this is an extreme example, but I think of the people who lived in Germany during World War II who were noticing that Jews were getting taken away and never seen again. And some of them, they were even getting stories from German soldiers who were in charge of running concentration camps and hearing about some of the things happening. But knowing that this was wrong, they said nothing. When everything came to light and the full picture was revealed of, like, what happened during the Holocaust, like, the immense amount of guilt that they felt inside for doing nothing and standing by. And, like, the shame that they felt when this came out, and then it also came out that they knew about these things of, like, why did you do nothing? Like, that's bearing false witness. Yeah. And, like, in a more practical way, it also makes me think of, like, the times where I was in school and I walked past people getting mistreated and bullied and abused, and I did nothing because I didn't want to get involved. But what I was saying very loudly in that moment by walking past those people is, either they deserved it or they are not worth me stepping in and stopping that from happening. And I hope they don't remember me walking past them. because I would be mortified if they did.
Yeah.
Because what I communicated very loudly by doing nothing was something that was untrue about that person, and that's that they don't have enough value to be respected and honored.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You know, I think we even see this in the teachings of Jesus. Like, as his followers, we're called to be a people who speak truth in all things.
Yeah.
And who live truth in all things, and who believe truth in all things. And, you know, there are times where that's going to be really inconvenient and really hard. There are going to be times where it doesn't really seem like it matters, like it's insignificant. But at the end of the day, like, our witness and, you know, like a testament to who Jesus is, like, man, it is based on how we handle a lot of these things. Like, I think you've shared, like, in your life, how many people you've met who are, like, wanting nothing to do with Jesus because of the way that Christians have acted. And man, I've seen that a lot too when you talk about people being persecuted. Sometimes the Christians are the most silent ones. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's what Jesus has called us to. It's not that we, you know, suddenly start protesting and become these revolutionaries, like, you know, by fighting back. But man, I think our love is a way to fight back.
Yep.
And it's speaking truth. And when people are beaten up and broken down, for us to step in and go, like, that's not who you are. And to be able to correct that and to give people an accurate vision of who they are and what this life is all about. Like, that is so incredibly important for you and for the people who are around you.
Yeah. All right. I think this kind of like leads to like a pretty solid big idea. What's the big idea?
Big idea, guys. It's real simple. Be honest in all things.
Yeah.
Like in everything, in your thoughts, in your words, in the things that you're subtly communicating, but still communicating.
Yeah.
The things you post online, right? The stories that you tell, like, just be honest.
Yep.
You don't have to impress people. You don't have to worry about fear or retribution. Like, man, honesty is this thing that is so lacking in our world, even though we could all agree we need it. Like, there's something so appealing about it when we see it, where we can't help but be drawn to it. And the cool thing is when we live that kind of life, people are going to be drawn to us, but it's not actually us they're drawn to.
Yeah.
It's Jesus.
Yep.
And so with that, we kind of wanted to end this time just by addressing some things that have been happening over the last couple weeks in our country. As you guys know, there have been multiple mass shootings that have happened. There was one over in Atlanta with a young guy shooting up some massage parlors. And then just here yesterday when we're filming this, so 2 days ago for you guys, there was a young man, 21 years old, in Boulder, at King Soopers, who killed 10 people.
Yep.
And you know, before we started filming this, Stetson and I both knew, like, we've got to address this. And we're kind of wrestling with where do we put this in here. And we thought the end was good because of the tie-in to this series. Man, we have both been working with young people like you and college students for well over a decade, probably more. And one of the things that we've noticed more than anything, I can speak for myself, maybe Stetson can affirm it, is that generally speaking, there are so many of your friends, and maybe even you yourself here tonight, who feel like you haven't figured out what your purpose is in life. You haven't figured out a direction. You feel aimless, like you're just not going anywhere. And that is so true for so many people. And when people get aimless, when people get directionless, they get hopeless. They get filled with despair. And it's when people get hopeless and filled with despair and they're just angry and bitter, that's when they pick up a gun and go shoot up a place.
Yep.
And so this whole series we're doing, we're not trying to indoctrinate you.
Not at all.
We're not trying to get you to believe the things that we believe. We're really trying to help you guys understand this better way of living, to let you know in a time where everything feels hopeless, where there is no direction, that there actually is hope in Jesus, that there is direction in this way that God has called us to live. And guys, when you live this out, right, when you say yes to this plan that God has for your life, the people around you who maybe do feel hopeless, who maybe do feel filled with despair, they're going to see it. They're going to be drawn to it. Like, your world, your schools, your friend circles, like they need this. And one of the simplest ways to give it to them is to just live the way God has made you to live.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the heartbeat behind the past 9 commandments that we've talked about is like God's heart is like the things that have happened recently are so heartbreaking to him. And not to take the blame off of the people who did these terrible things, it's very possible that what led them to that place is a lack of the things that we've been talking about in the way that they have been treated by other people.
Yeah.
So God is saying, it's like, let's be people that do these things and stop these terrible things from happening. Like, these things can change our friends' lives, our communities, our world. Like, there's no limit to the capacity that these things have.
Us doing this can literally save lives. Right? By stepping in and telling someone your life matters and is valuable. Maybe they don't take their own.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't get bullied anymore, right? Maybe the homeless individuals that we know or see, like, maybe they actually get a shot at a future. Like, this stuff is significant. It's not just for us to put on our good Christian moral badge of like, I obey all 10 commandments. It's like, no, like, this isn't just for us. This is for our world. Like, our world needs this.
Yeah, and I think CC Students is an example of that, at least what we're trying to do. Like, one of the reasons why some of you come here isn't because you believe the same things that we do, but because you experience the impact of when your leaders and me and Nathan choose to live our lives in this way and treat you in this way.
Yeah.
And like you and I know, it's literally saved some people's lives. And you guys can be a part of the same thing. And literally saving other people's lives by loving them in these ways.
Yeah. So we're going to hand it off to house parties now. We got some questions for you guys just to talk about, specifically focusing on this 9th commandment. So we're going to come up here and dismiss you guys. If you're new, we got a place for you to go as well. But thanks for joining us,
Love
guys.
you guys.